Hello.
Hello. Thank you for chatting with me. I just want to make sure my audio is working, correct? Can you hear me?
Mm, yeah, can I?
Okay, okay.
I can.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, so I wanted to just talk to you a little bit and ask what it's like being, trans in China. But I guess I want to start little like who are you? Like, what's your name? What's your like yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I'm Scarlet. I'm almost 23 years old. I only recently started hormones about in May last year.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a non-binary trans feminine person living
Mm-hmm.
in the northern part of China, a big city in the northern part of China. Mm, in my free in my free time, I like to watch baseball games, play baseball, softball. But currently, I do not have much time for that anymore. I'm very busy
Yeah.
with my research, psychology, psychiatry, things like that. So most of the time, I just spend either in the lab or in the bed.
Yeah. Do you enjoy doing research?
Oh, well, research itself is fine, like writing papers, analyzing my data. Well,
Yeah.
actually, I enjoy analyzing my data and writing paper, but the experiment actually collecting the data and the publication grind, like major revision, minor revision, is quite some hassle.
Yeah, I can believe that. Do you have a favorite? Okay, do they have Chinese baseball teams or do you like American baseball?
Oh, well, actually, I think American baseball and Chinese baseball are the same sports. They are both baseball. Um,
I'm not a big sports person, so they're all the same. Do you have a favorite baseball team?
My favorite baseball team is in Taiwan. It's called CTBC Brothers. And my second favorite baseball team is the LA Dodgers.
Mm, nice, nice. Cool. Um, so then I am curious, what is it like? What has your journey been like being trans in China? What is that kind of experience like?
Oh well, that's actually gonna check pretty early into my childhood. When I was a child, I thought I was a girl actually, but
Mm-hmm.
I did not realize I was transgender because in China no one knows what transgender means.
Yeah.
So my dad, my mom just told me I'm a boy, and I just somewhat believe in them. While actually, I totally feel that pretending to be a boy, like I socialize better with girls until puberty hit. When the girls would like, no, you cannot be intimate with that anymore. I was like, well, oh really? Mm.
Yeah.
And
And
during junior high school, I write my gender as a Chinese character that's a mix of boy and girl.
mm-hmm.
I
And
mix the two characters together and create a new one, like half
mm-hmm.
male, half female, thing like that. I write my gender as that.
Yeah.
And when puberty hits, I did not realize I was transgender, but I was extremely curious about how it's like to get pregnant. I'd imagine myself getting pregnant, research
Really?
about
Yeah.
it, like from week 1 to week 40. I like, well, I think too bad I could not get pregnant. I thought I just lost some kind of lottery. I thought it was just bad luck that I was born male. Um,
Yeah.
and Fortunately, I got a very high score in the college entrance examination and went into a very good university. There, I was immersed with all kinds of progressive ideas. But
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately, the first idea that was remotely progressive that I was exposed to is radical feminism, especially the turf kind of feminism. And I
Yeah.
just hated them. Like, when I see the feminists post on social media, like, all men are bad, all men are like this, things like that. I think, well, I am a man, but I have zero similarity with these men. Then who am I? I already want to be a girl so badly. Being a man is
Yeah.
already miserable. So why do you say like I have male privilege, things like that? Then about 3 years ago, some right-wingers online, like in the political group, some
Mm-hmm.
right-wingers online started calling me the T slur. They called me a T whatever T slur, and I was like totally confused. Like I wasn't even trans. Why are they calling
Yeah.
me this?
They were
And
just insulting you for no for
yeah, yeah, they are seeing
oh
something in
my
me.
gosh.
Yeah, of course.
They
And
they
then
they
more,
they, they saw your true self.
yeah, accidental ally, I say.
Oh my gosh.
And then over the course of about 1.5 years, more and more people, both online and even in real life, started telling me like I should change my sex, I should get some surgery, I should get some hormones, that I'm
Really?
transgender, things like that. Yeah, people started
I
telling me.
I'm curious, what is that like? I feel like in America, people like to tell you that you're not. They're like, you're not transgender. Just don't go on medicine. Don't get a sex change. Just be a boy. Just be a gay man, right? That's what America likes. But what is the culture in
"Mm,
China like? You said people are telling you to like get a sex change.
well, actually, that's because I previously identified as a bottom bisexual man. And
Mm-hmm.
then when I got some boyfriends, I told them like I wanted to be a girl, I want to be treated like a girl, I wanted to have a
Yeah,
vagina, things like that. And
but there wasn't like the transgender word or like what was that like?
like my ex-boyfriend just told me that when he looked at my profile picture, I look someone like who's gonna be trans very soon. And then just people just told me, oh, well, actually, you can be a girl if you want to be. You can just get some hormones, get a surgery, things like that.
Yeah. So there is like general knowledge in like the people, right? It sounds like transgender people aren't banished. It sounds like people
Um,
know about trans people or like what would you say that's like? The
oh, well, actually, most older people, like over 40 years old, do not know. They do not have even a single clue. But younger
Mhm.
people, like 20 something, especially LGBT people, they may know something about transgender.
Do you feel like trans people face a lot of opposition from society? Like or do you feel like the older people might not know about it, but they're very, accepting and open of people being
Oh,
individuals
far
or
from that, far from that. Nah.
not that.
The
Okay. What
older
would you
people are
say?
very conservative, very close-minded.
Mhm.
Like the older people, generally they want their children to be as straight as possible, have some kids, things like that, a very traditional lifestyle. And they do not even know what transgender is. They just call us human monsters. That's 人妖 in
Really?
Chinese. That yes, literally call us human monsters, something like that.
Wow.
Yeah, but fortunately, my parents are at least neutral about my transition. At first, they seemed confused, but and kind of oppositional. But now they are just kind of accepting and neutral, things like that. But I'd like to say my parents are already better than 99% of parents in China. Like in China, the
Yeah.
vast majority of parents just want their children to be straight. And if they are gay or even trans, they even consider sending their children to conversion camps, things like that.
Yeah, I would like to know more about that because I heard online that I think up until you're 35, your parents still have to sign off on your like hormones, right? Or was that with intersex
Mm,
conditions? I think that might have been intersex condition. I've been reading a lot and there's a lot of translation, so I'm not positive what I read about transgender people versus like intersex people. So, yeah.
or actually, for the parent signing off part, it actually varies from hospital to hospital. Some hospital
Really?
have the age of 35 as cutoff. Some hospital have 30. Some hospital they just judge you based on your social economic status. If they think you are rich enough to afford your transition, they will just omit the parent part entirely.
So is
It
that part of the reason for requiring parental support? It's more of a financial or economic aspect?
Yeah, because many parents are conservative, they'd abandon their child if they find out the children are trans. So if I'm still in college and my parents just cut off the money,
The
then my
hospital
life is
does
gonna
not want to help you. Yeah,
yeah,
that makes
and
sense.
yeah, and some conservative parents even send threats to transgender specialized in hospitals that it's threat, oh, we're gonna kill you, thing like that.
Really?
Yeah.
That's very serious.
So like being a transgender specialist in China is very dangerous. They face threats from conservative parents, from anti-trans activists, and also um, their workload is very big because there are only a few hospitals that offer transgender care in China, but there are many transgender people. So the workload for every doctor is huge.
Yeah. I one question I have is it sounds like a lot of the older people are not very supportive, but I'm curious legally, does your government support trans people? Does your government not support trans people? Or is it like everybody can be free to do what they want and they don't really have a position on it? Does that make sense?
Well, actually, I'd say the government is largely neutral. I
Mm-hmm.
can change my legal ID, change everything, but only after surgery, after bottom surgery. But the thing
Mm-hmm.
is that I do not really want it. If I do the surgery, the reason would be changing the ID, like changing the documents, the
Yeah.
legal stuff, the social stuff, and not about dysphoria itself.
It's not about what you
And
want for
yeah,
yourself, it's about what they're making you do.
yeah, the government actually does some research, found some
Mm-hmm.
research on transgender care, but they
Oh,
do not.
really?
Yeah, they do
That's
fund
awesome.
research on transgender care, but they do not allow like publicizing the transgender movement. Like they do not allow like handing out white flags, things like that. But they do like support scientific research on transgender care.
I have a question about this actually. I have been learning that a large reason so many things you're not allowed to talk about on social media is because they're protecting children from being exposed to it, right? So I'm curious if they look at transgender flags or things like that, kind of how they look at religion. I learned that you're not allowed to talk about religion on social media because they don't want, or am I wrong about that?
Well, actually, it's got nothing to do with religion. The government only cares about stability. So they do not like any kind of political activism, whether it's
Mm-hmm.
left, right, liberal, authoritarian, fascist, whatever. They do not like
So
it. So
So
they
they
do
don't
not
want
like anything
transgender
political.
activists or anti-transgender activists. They don't want either side to cause instability.
Yeah, true.
Cool. That's I like the idea of a stable government. I like that idea. Okay. I I'm curious about your social life as a transgender person. You said there are a lot of transgender people. Are there like maybe areas of cities that are mostly LGBT people where they live together, or would you say it's kind of everybody lives everywhere, or like does that make sense? Does my question make sense?
Oh, well, it's actually like, oh, sorry. Overall, it's actually like everybody lives everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
There's no specific area for transgender or gay people, things like that. And actually, I do not have much of a social life at all because lab work, oh my goodness.
Yeah, you're so busy.
I
You're
do
so
not have the
busy.
time.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I'm curious. You mentioned you do go to a university which has a lot more progressive people. I'm curious, how many what percentage of people would you say are trans if you just had to give a guess? And I know it's hard to think about that, but would you say
Like,
it's like
um, well, if you say transgender, I say 0.3%, about 1 in
ze-
300.
mm-hmm. In China, it's about 1 in 300?
Like in my university, but in China, I'd
Mm.
say 1 in a few thousand, whatever, because a lot of trans people fail to realize they are trans. They just
Mm.
identify as cross dressers, as femboys, things like that. They fail to realize their identity.
That's a question I had as well. Is there a lot of cross-gender people, femboys? Are there a lot of maybe trans women who don't realize they're trans who identify as gay men? Um, so would you say they're still in the LGBT community, just they don't realize like the options of what you can be? Or like, yeah.
Oh yeah, correct. Like because transmedicalism is very rampant in China. A lot of trans
Mm-hmm.
women who do not fit strict stereotypes of which or of a true transsexual thing like that. They just identify as gay men, cross-dresser, femboys, things like that. And similarly, a lot of trans men identify as tomboys, lesbians, things like that. Like many trans women post on social media that I do not want bottom surgery, I'm just a gay man, things like that. Or my dysphoria is mild, so I'm not really trans, things like that.
Yeah. That's really interesting hearing how the culture kind of plays out over there. I wonder if we'll start to see a lot of similar aspects to our culture with, you know, in America with the incoming leadership structure is that I'll leave it there. I also was curious, what about general LGBT acceptance in China? Are people more accepting of gay people and lesbians and like, you know, more diversity, or is it still kind of conservative 90% we don't like gay people or trans people?
Oh, well, actually, for the older people part, they are against all kind of LGBT. But for the
Okay.
younger people part, the acceptance of gay and lesbian people is about, I'd say, 50%, whatever. But 50
Yeah.
to 80%, anywhere around that. But for
Mhm.
transgender people, most people only accept those who already have the surgery. They do not
I
allow like
see.
the pre-op trans women, things like that. They only allow the post-op ones.
And when you say that, you mean like legally, like in bathrooms or like other private spaces? That is that what you mean? Or do you mean just socially?
Well, actually, I mean just socially, because legally the government doesn't give a damn. They don't care.
Oh, okay. So you could just kind of do whatever you want. Are there, this is a dumb question. I know it's a dumb question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Are there gendered bathrooms in China, or are all bathrooms like unisex?
Yeah, there are gendered bathrooms, but the government never intervenes. They don't care. Well, actually, it's just a social, more about the social aspect. If you pass enough, the women will like feel safe, things like that. But the government almost never intervenes.
Interesting.
They don't give a damn.
Thank you. I have another question, and this is less about LGBT people and more about the different generations. I'm curious if you would say that your relationship with your parents is similar to their relationship with their parents, or would you say like those generation parent-child relationships have been changing? Does that make sense? Like, do the old people have
Oh,
similar
well,
relationships as the younger people?
I see. But actually, there's an interesting difference between China and the US because China developed so rapidly over one generation. Like my generation, the post 90s and post zeros, are the first generation that got higher education, university education, PhD, things like that. So their difference, our difference from our parents is the biggest because our parents are from the like the first generation that's experienced reform and opening up when they were young. They were like post 70s, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But before my parents' generation, they were actually pretty much similar because when my parents were young, it was like the 1980s when China hadn't really opened up a lot yet. So the entire country is conservative. The entire country is very conservative. There is not a lot
Yeah.
of there are not a lot of difference. But now the older people older than 40 are stuck in the 1980s, even 1960s. But we are like exposed to the more progressive ideas. So the difference is huge, things like that.
I am curious how your parents react, like your parents' generation, not yours. Well, yours maybe specifically, but in general, your parents' generation, how do they interact with having kids that are exposed to more global ideas versus like they're conservative? Like, does that question make sense? Are they?
Yeah, it
Yeah.
does. It does. It does.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. So generally, the average parent in China is anti-gay, anti-trans.
Mm-hmm.
They are just gonna think their children are brainwashed by the U.S. they are perverts, they are freaks, things like that. If they are gay or transgender, and would
Mm-hmm.
like if the children are young, like still in puberty, they may send them to conversion camps. But they are old, like they are not much they are gonna do.
Are there a lot of conversion camps in China? Or is that just kind of another thing the government says, I don't really care if it happens, I don't care if it doesn't happen, like, that's on y'all. Does,
Well, actually, it's technically illegal, but there are so
really?
yeah, it's technically illegal, but there are so many of them. So the government just failed to regulate things like that because there are so many of them. They just these conversion camps just mostly advertise on social media, because if they advertise in real life, they are going to be reported, things like that, reported to the police, things like that. They just advertise on social media and say they are for correcting internet addiction, things like that, video game addiction, things like that. But in
Yeah,
reality, in addition to video game addiction, they also convert gay, trans people, things like that.
that's really interesting. And I think they do very similar things here, where they run it under the guise of wilderness therapy camps. And it's conversion camps. Um, that's really interesting to hear that there are a lot of like similarities in the way that our like people work. I have more questions. Let me ask. I I don't know what I'm not allowed to ask. So just tell me if I say anything I'm not allowed to talk about and we can just stop it and I can cut it out of the recording.
Okay, can
But
can can.
okay. I'm curious how America says a lot of things about China that I don't think are real. And I'm curious, based on your perception of what you think Americans think about China, how much would you say that we're being lied to? Or like what would you say the biggest surprise is
Like
for an American?
most of the Western media's narratives about China are fake. Like
Mm-hmm.
the the mostly the facts are like 70% true, but the narrative is mostly fake because they try to frame it into a very specific narrative, thing like that. For example, there is no such thing as social credit in China. It's a whole lie. It's propaganda,
What
and
is it?
there is no
Or is
so
it just not it doesn't exist, there's no system that even like we have a credit score that is like our how well we can pay back our debts, which is a very American thing maybe.
yeah.
But um
Yeah,
is that
we have such a credit score similar to the US, but it's issued by the bank, not by the Chinese government.
yeah, ours is we have three companies that all have a credit score for us, but they're not banks. They're just like I don't know what kind of company they are actually.
Oh
I don't know
yeah,
what
oh sorry for the mistake. In China, it's like Alipay, but it's still not a bank. It's just like a financial company, things like that,
Oh,
and that
gotcha,
has
gotcha.
zero relationship with the narrative that American media try to portray. That the whole social credit thing is fake.
Yeah, they really do paint it like that. And I guess another question I have is does the Chinese government actually own every company, or is
No,
it that's what they tell us. They tell us the Chinese government owns everything. Every
no,
company,
it's
your data is being
no, it's
eaten
not
by the
true.
government.
No, it's
They just
fake. No,
lie
it's
about
fake.
everything. What the heck?
No, it's fake. There are many private companies. Actually, most of the companies in China are private.
Really?
Yeah,
They really
the majority are private. China has a mixed economy, pretty similar to Europe, to continental Europe, things like that.
Mhm.
Most of the companies are private, and government doesn't give a damn as long as you are not doing anything political.
I see. Okay. So, can I ask, are there any industries where the government does own like in America there are industries that the government owns the
Well,
things that
the
they own the
government
businesses.
owns, for example, the railway and
Okay.
um, post service, but only a part of the post service. And
Mm-hmm.
actually, in China, it's kind of like that. Every industry has a part of government ownership. Like there are food companies which are government owned, but there are others who are private owned. There are tech companies that are government owned, but others are private owned, things like that.
So there's always a public option and a private option.
Yeah, kind of like that.
I I think that is a very good system because I think about how America only has the private system and there's no competition that is caring about the people. There's only people that are caring about money, which is a bad system here in America.
Where actually in China it's kind of like that. The public option on also operates by the logic of the market, so there is no big difference. Like
I see.
sometimes on Taobao, I buy some food from a government-owned megacorp, sometimes from private sellers. The price are the same, the quality are the same, so no
Mm-hmm.
difference. But I
I
think the
see.
most profound difference is in healthcare. Yeah, the healthcare is mostly government owned. We have cheap, efficient, and fast public hospitals. But the
Mm-hmm.
downside is the hospitals are very crowded. The environment, the service may not be very good. But if you're rich, you can go to private hospitals. They are much more expensive, like 50 times, 30 times more expensive than the public option.
Mm-hmm.
The quality of healthcare is actually pretty much the same, but the service, the environment, things like that are much better.
Really? That's actually really interesting that the level of service is the same as well. That's really cool. Thank you for sharing that with me.
Like the medical care itself is the same, but the doctors, the nurses in the private hospitals are much more patient. The
Yeah.
environment is better. The customer experience is better, things like that. But the actual drug, the actual service is more or less the same.
Yeah.
The public hospitals may give some cheaper drugs. The private hospital may give some more expensive drugs, but the quality was the same until very recently. Until very recently, when the government hospitals just want to cut price and use some worse drugs, things like worse quality
Yeah.
drugs. They just want to cut expenses, and now this problem is a process of being corrected. The government is already like asking experts their opinions, things like that.
Yeah. Another question I have is, excuse me, about another misconception that, well, about another thing that we're told in America. I'm curious if the Great Firewall is actually a thing or if that's just another narrative spin
It
of,
is a theme, but now every young person knows how to use the VPN, so that's pretty
so
much
it's not
non-existent.
really a thing. Yeah.
Yeah, it technically is a thing, but most young people know how to use the VPN. Most old people do not know.
And with a VPN, you're able to get out of it.
And yeah, I regularly use it for like watching YouTube for research, things like that. The government doesn't give a single damn.
So it's allowed. They just like there's the firewall, but they don't care if you go around it. Is what it's basically.
Yes, 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 correct.
I'm under the impression, and this is about kind of the firewall, I'm under the impression that a lot of the regulations in place are to protect Chinese people. Um, I have heard, oh, we have 10 minutes left in this call because I have the free Zoom. But I have heard that, so I'm on, I'm on Xiaohongshu, as you know, um, and I've had a lot of people doing this Myanmar scam meme in my comments. I think it's a Myanmar scam meme. But I'm under the impression that a lot of these firewalls and regulations were to protect people that were getting scammed. Like I heard that Chinese people were getting organ trafficked by Myanmar people, or is this me misunderstanding the people in my comment section?
Um, well, actually, the Myanmar scam scene mostly targets undereducated people, so they are not the group that most likely want to go outside of the Great Firewall.
I
Mm,
see.
the Great Firewall, I'd say, I don't have an opinion on it because it's not a thing. I use VPN every day, so
Oh,
I
true.
don't
Yeah,
have an opinion.
that makes sense. Okay. I did have another question. It was not about that. I'm curious if there are better ways to access history from the Chinese perspective. Because sometimes I will try to research certain events that I know have an American name and a Chinese name, and you get very different results. And
Oh,
sometimes I want to
well,
learn about
I
things.
see it. I see it. I do not want to tell you about the specific events that happened about
No, no, no,
35
no,
years
no, no.
ago.
I'm not asking you to tell me that. I'm not asking you to tell me that. I'm asking if I wanted to do my own research, are there websites that are available outside of China where I could learn about the Chinese perspective of history?
Well,
Does that make
actually,
sense? Does that
the
question make sense? I'm
Chinese
not asking you
perspective
to
of the
tell me.
history is, I think, it's mostly the same as American history. The Chinese history textbooks just add some fancy names such as whatever social class, whatever revolution, but no, but the core content is almost the same.
Okay. So you would say that Americans are generally pretty accurate about like, oh, well, I feel like there's always the narrative
The
spin.
Americans are not accurate, but the American scholars are kind of, at least they are in the ballpark. But the American public, I think, is hugely misinformed.
That makes a lot of sense, and that is the way it is about a lot of issues in America. The scholars know what they're talking about, and then the media spins it. And there's always narratives. I hate narratives, but I appreciate the answer to that question. And yes, I am curious if there's anything else that you would want to tell me because I don't know what questions to ask because I don't know what I don't know. So, is there anything that you think is like interesting or that you want to share?
Oh, well, actually, I wonder if you have interacted with a Chinese person before, because most of the questions I think are not about being trans, being gay, things like that. It's more about life in China. But actually, if you wonder so much about China, you can come here under the visa-free transit policy. I think you can have a look yourself, because
Mm-hmm.
whatever I told you is from only one Chinese person perspective who lives in a large city, in a lower middle class family, and is non-binary trans family. So if you want to learn more about China, you can come here to experience yourself.
Yeah, and I apologize for that. Because you're right. You are the first Chinese person I've ever spoken to on like a call like this. I've had Chinese people in my university classes, but never like on a call like this talking about China, if that makes sense, or life in China. Um, I want to ask another question. You've meant, is it safe for trans people in all parts of China, or do you feel like in more rural areas there can be more dangers?
Definitely in the rural areas, it's gonna be more dangerous. People would
Mm-hmm.
call them human monsters. They are like more prone to sexual assault, mm, less accepted in the society, things like that. That's the reason why I don't want to return there.
Yeah. I guess one other question I do have in my comments, somebody mentioned a transgender artist. I believe her name was I don't remember her name, but
Not an artist, but a performer, right? And a very
yes,
old
yes,
one, like she transitioned in the 90s, things like that.
yes, yes.
Yes, I
Um,
know Jinxing. Okay.
and then they were saying that she got like canceled for promoting transgender stuff, and I guess I'm curious. Um, is there a lot of if you as a trans person want to look at other Chinese trans idols, are there people that you can look to for motivation or encouragement? Like in America, we have a lot of stories about the LGBT community over the past 70 years, right? I'm curious if there are any parallels for like Chinese communities.
No, not actually, because most trans people are pretty young. They are 20 something. They are too young to become idols, to become public figures, things like that. Maybe 20 years later, when we grow old, become scientists, PI, movie stars, things like that, the younger generation of trans people may have something to look up to.
Yeah. Do you think that China will move in a more progressive direction because of the interconnectedness? Or do you feel like a lot of those conservative values will like stay?
Well, actually, I think the progressive values will override the conservative ones because most of the people in China are getting educated in higher education, in college, getting PhD,
Mm-hmm.
doing masters, going overseas, things like that. The conservative things, conservative values mainly stem from the lack of education. And nowadays, the uh, competition is very harsh. This social pressure is very strict, and a lot of young people just move to the left politically. Move to the left, they are gonna read some theory, Marxist theory, queer theory, things like that. That also makes them more radical, more progressive.
Thank you very much. We're about to run out of time on the Zoom call. I can start another one. It says we have 2 minutes and 50 seconds.
Um,
Do you want me to start another one?
and
Or
can
do you
can
have
can you can definitely start another one.
Okay, give me 2 seconds. I will do that and I will send you another invite.
Okay, can. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay.
Hello
Oh,
again.
hello. Can you hear me?
Hel Yes, I am able to hear you.
Okay.
Perfect. And then I wanted to make sure that I did ask you some more questions specifically about kind of being trans in China. So I am curious if you feel like there are any major differences between being trans in China versus other parts of the world. And it doesn't have to be just America, just China versus the rest of the world, not just China versus America.
Well, actually, there's no difference because China is just a developing country. There are countries that being trans is even worse, such as Afghanistan, like Vietnam, things like that. There are countries that are a little bit more progressive, such as Sweden, Germany, things like that. Um, but I say that there is no general difference between China versus a generalized other part of the world.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. Mhm. I am curious if there are LGBTQ social communities. For example, in America, when America was not quite as accepting or open about LGBT culture, there were these things called like balls or like ballroom, the ballroom scene, which was like an underground LGBT scene where they would go and dance and just have like free expression with each other and not have to worry about people that hate. I'm curious if there are similar things like that in China
Yeah,
or if
yeah,
it's
true. There are similar communities in China. Some of them are like very normative. They have a very outdated ideas of what transgender means, things like that. So I do not join them. But there are
yeah.
also some more progressive queer groups, mostly online, and I sometimes talk with them, but I avoid them generally because I do not want to ruin my mood. I have research to do. I have papers to write. I do not want to waste too much time on complaining about everything, things like that.
Yeah. Do you feel like the trans community does that a lot? Do you feel like they like to kind of complain a lot rather than focus on other things?
Sadly, I think for some communities it's true because mm, China is generally more conservative compared to the West, and we face a lot of discrimination, especially from older people. And in the younger people, I think mostly from straight men and trans exclusionary radical feminists. So there are a lot of there are a lot of things to complain, sadly.
Yeah. You mentioned discrimination. Is th- are so is there just no legal protection against discrimination, or is that a similar situation to like the conversion camps where it's not legal but people still do it?
There's no legal protection nor legal discrimination. The government is like neutral, no position, they are neutral.
Only about LGBT or about everything?
About LGBT, I think the government
The
just doesn't care. It's neutral. It's entirely up to the society, and unfortunately, the society is conservative mostly.
Yeah. Does China have discrimination protection for like women, for example, or maybe
Yeah,
disabled people?
mm, they do have. We do have discrimination, like anti-discrimination policies. Like
Mm-hmm.
for women, for disabled people, we do have these progressive policies. But as transgender activism is a very recent thing in China, like only the past decade. So I think
Mm-hmm.
the government doesn't have the time to react, things like that.
Yeah. I'm I am curious how that interaction works. Is there a lot of interaction between the government and like the people in China? Or does the government kind of do what the government does and like the people do what the people do? Does that make sense?
There's not a lot of interaction. Or what does interaction mean? Like in the daily life, the biggest interaction with the government is probably like maybe buying some train tickets. I need to show my ID card,
Yeah,
or going outside of the country. I need to show my passport, things like that. Outside of that, not much.
that
Or
makes
plus
sense.
paying the taxes, paying the housewarming fees, paying all kind of things like that.
Yeah. How do tax Okay, I'm sorry to ask you more general China questions, but how do taxes work? Do they tell you how much you have to pay, or do they make you figure out the number yourself?
They tell me how much I have to pay. Actually, it works like that. If for example my salary is 10,000 yuan per month, what I receive is often less than that because they deducted the tax before I receive.
And
Sometimes like I have to pay the housewarming fee. Like the government offers housewarming for all people living in North China, but I have to pay a fee, a small fee, to warm up my house.
oh, like
Uh,
heating? Like
yeah,
the
heating,
Oh, gotcha,
heating.
gotcha, okay.
Yeah, heating.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, my English is not very good.
No, no, no. You said housewarming, and that literally makes sense as like it warms the house. But when you say
Uh,
housewarming, I think like a party where people give
oh
you
no, it's
gifts to
literally
celebrate a
like
new.
warming
Yeah,
up the
yeah.
house. Yeah. Literally like warming up the house heating.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So they charge everybody like a blanket fee. Do you pay utilities in China, or does the government provide all utilities?
The utilities are actually paid to private companies.
Gotcha. So why do you have to pay an extra housewarming fee rather than just pay
Um,
the company more money to heat the house?
the house heating system is provided by the government. They are
Oh, gotcha.
public. Yeah, they are public. But the utilities are private. The utility fees are actually also pretty much symbolic. It's very low.
Mm-hmm.
And we do not have much interaction with the government. It's like a very distant thing, kind of like how it works in Singapore or in Thailand, thing like that. It's very distant thing.
Mm-hmm. I'm not very familiar with how they interact with their government either, but I will take your word for it. Um, mm, I'm trying to think of questions. Yes, I'm curious if your experience as a non-binary person is different than what you would say, like a different not non-binary person is like. Does that make sense?
My biggest struggle is that my gender identity is leaning feminine, like 50% feminine, 50% agender maybe. But my gender
Mm-hmm.
expression leans masculine, like I have a lot of masculine hobbies.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I do not want to dress excessively femininely, things like that. But that leads me to be misgendered, like as male,
Mm-hmm.
by most people. So like kind of like there's no solution. If I fully transition to female, do all the surgeries, dress in stereotypically feminine way, talking stereotypically feminine way, people will think I am a woman, but I'm putting on the show that I'm showing my fake self. But if I
Yeah.
show my true self, people are gonna misgender me, things like that. So there are kind of no real solution.
Yeah. I'm also curious if the younger people have a better understanding of things like non-binary identities, or if you would say that it's mostly they understand gay and lesbian, some of them understand transgender, not very many of them understand non-binary. Yeah.
Sadly, only non-binary people understand non-binary. Some trans
Yeah.
people, binary trans people, some of them do understand, but straight people, straight cis people, rarely do.
That makes sense. do you find that people would be they would treat you similarly if they thought you were trans versus non-binary, or do you think they would treat you differently?
Most of the people do not know what non-binary means. They gender people based on the binary system is male or
Yeah.
female. Like currently, sometimes people ask my gender because I'm androgynous,
Mm-hmm.
and in the end, they just gonna gender me either as male, mostly as male, and rarely sometimes as female.
Mm-hmm.
So non-binary pretty much in the public perception is not a thing.
That makes sense. That makes sense. Let me see. I I am curious how your LGBT identity interacts with maybe dating life. Do you date? Are you interested in dating? Do you like, is there a dating LGBT scene? I know these are dumb questions, but I'm just asking because I'm not familiar with this in like the Chinese context.
Oh, well, I actually have a partner who's
Mm-hmm.
also agender, who's agender. Like I'm like non-binary trans feminine, but they are
Mm-hmm.
like completely agender. And for the general dating, I don't know much because I generally do not date straight cis people.
Yeah, I mean like the other LGBT community, do you find that a lot of people have trouble dating? Do you think it's
True.
pretty like they do?
Yeah, it's true, Sally, very true.
Mm-hmm.
The easiest part inside the LGBT community is maybe the gay and the lesbian part. But the bi part actually they are looked down upon by many gay people, by many lesbian
Really?
people. Gay people and lesbian people think bisexual people are traitors. They are like unstable, unreliable, things like that. And actually, the trans people are, I think, the most difficult, sadly. The general society do not see us as real men or real women. They
Mm-hmm.
see us as some third gender, some human monster, things like that.
Yeah. Unfortunately, it seems like they do here too. Well, some people, not everybody, but the very conservative people here and the very conservative people there, it sounds like they talk about us the same way.
And they think we are just some freak that have some weird sexual fetish,
Yeah.
things like that. The conservative people just invent all kinds of lies to invalidate us.
Yeah. Sometimes I think that a lot of them are jealous that they had to live 80 years ago and don't get to live today. But maybe that's just me thinking that they're jealous rather than them actually being jealous. But um like I imagine a lot of them also may have been transgender if they lived in a different time, right?
But actually, I don't know because I
You don't think
rarely
so?
interact with the very conservative people. I don't
Oh, that
really
makes
have deep
that makes sense.
conversation
That
with
makes
them.
sense. Yeah, that makes sense. Um, I'm sorry. I'm rambling, but I this is a random question. Do you think the number of gay men and lesbian women are around the same? Or would you say they're like more of one than the other?
There's no study on this.
I'm just curious from your
Like,
opinion. Well, if you had to guess.
I'm a research student, so everything has to be based on evidence or research papers.
Okay, okay.
I don't
I'm
know.
sorry then. I was just curious. So wait, so that means the one out of every 300 and one out of every 1,000 or so is actually is like kind of based in research?
No, no, no. That's
Like
only
vaguely?
yeah, only based on my guess. But
Okay,
the trans people is only based on my guess. But I do not know how many gay people there are or how many lesbian people there are
that makes
because
sense.
my sample size is too small.
Yeah. I have another question. I'm curious if you think all of the LGBT community in China kind of spends a lot of time together, or would you say it's kind of like lesbian and gay communities, bisexual communities or like bisexual and trans communities? Like, are they all one group or is it multiple groups out of the letters?
There are multiple groups, such as the gay people are one group, lesbian people one group, bisexual people one group, and trans people one group. The bisexual or pansexual and trans, they are often like interacting with each other, but in Chinese we call pure gay or pure lesbian. They rarely interact with the rest of the group because they more like the transgender people, things like that. They are like
Mm-hmm.
very pretty much like the Western purity culture. Like I'm 100% gay.
It's like
Bisexual people
gold
are
star, right? Like a gold
haters.
star lesbian. I would never touch a man kind of idea.
Yeah, kind of like the gold star gay, gold star lesbian.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Would you say most gay or lesbian people are like pure gays? Or would you say that most of them are more open-minded?
Well, I don't know. I've got
Fair
no idea.
enough. Fair enough. I was just curious if it leaned any way in your head. But you think it's probably a mix of both?
Both.
Surely.
I think it's a mix. I don't have an idea of the percentage, things like that. I have no idea about that.
I guess I was trying to figure out if it feels like a big community or if you feel very alone as transgender people. Like as a
Um,
trans community, do you feel alone or do you feel like you're part of a larger group of people? Does that make sense?
I feel very alone actually,
Mm-hmm.
because most of the transgender community is dominated by binary trans women. Like they
Mm.
pursue the stereotypical female beauty standards. They want to do all the things, the whole transition package, all the surgeries. They just want to assimilate into the cis female society. Um, I have not much common language with them. But actually, there is another queer group that is more progressive. The queer group is more progressive, but they are mostly online because they are so much outnumbered. Our number is so small. Visibility is
Yeah.
so low and the number is small, so we are just online. And in addition to that, I've got a lot of research to do. Every day I have experiment to do, and now I have some papers to write and revise. I do not have much time for socializing.
Yeah. I have another question, not about the LGBT community, but about school. I have a German friend who does uh like months of school and then like 2 weeks of a break and then back to school. In America, we get summers off. We get it like a month in the winter time off. I'm curious what the school system is like in China in terms of breaks, in terms of yeah.
For undergraduate students, it's actually very lax. We have a very long summer vacation, maybe 2.5 months, and a
Mm-hmm.
winter vacation, 1.5 months. But now I'm graduate student, so my winter vacation is only like 2 or 3 weeks, and I do not
Mm-hmm.
have a summer vacation at all.
Really?
Um, Maybe I have one summer vacation, only one chance this summer because in June, at the end of June, I'm gonna defend my paper, and
Mm-hmm.
then before I start the next phase of study in late August, I have 2 months of free time. But I
That's
think
ex
during that period of time, I also have to analyze data, to write papers, to revise papers, things like that, because I have multiple papers in progress.
yeah. That is really interesting. Do you feel like you're ready to defend your PhD? Or not PhD. Do you feel like you're ready to defend your thesis?
I do not. Well, actually, if I were born cis, I were born a cis woman, I wouldn't do a PhD or MD at all because
Mm-hmm.
the reason I'm doing my doctorate degree is to like gain more chance to advance work opportunities, to move abroad, to get into a more progressive area that where trans people are more accepted.
Mm-hmm.
If I were cis, I wouldn't do that at all.
Yeah.
And actually, it's a general social pressure because I got a very high score in the college entrance exam. People think I'm a genius, I'm a gifted child.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, the society generally expects more out of us.
Do you feel like that pressure? Mm,
Oh,
I don't know
sorry.
I'm sorry. I'm trying to think of how I want to phrase the question. Do you think the high pressure could, and this, you can just say no if you don't think so. So I'm not trying to lead the question, but I am curious if you feel like the high pressure may have, or like intense gender roles may have led you to feel like you want to be trans. Like, what do you feel like caused you to want to be transgender? Does that make sense?
There's
Sorry.
no cause. I was born into the wrong body.
Yeah. And is that like how most trans people feel in China? Like that's the mentality. In one of my comments, somebody told me that they have man genes above and women genes below, and I wasn't sure if that was a common held mentality or if that was just that one person.
I don't know about other trans people, but for me, I think I was just supposed to be a girl or a tomboy. I like to say non-binary girl or whatever that means. Definitely
Mm-hmm.
not male.
Do you feel like you would have been a tomboy if you had been born a cis woman?
Yeah, I still like baseball, softball, all kind of masculine things such as history, military history,
Mm-hmm.
sports, things like that. But maybe if my upbringing were different, like they raised me as a very stereotypically feminine girly girl, I might be getting interested in fashion, in makeup, things like that.
Yeah. Do you feel like women and men generally have even footing in China?
No, the misogyny is still a very big issue. Women are
Mm-hmm.
discriminated in many parts of the life, such as the workplace, the family, things like that. They are discriminated in many walks of life.
Do you feel like it's improving? Or like
Yeah, yeah,
with these
definitely,
new progressive
definitely, it
values?
is improving. It is improving a lot at a rapid pace.
That's good. Do you, okay, that's another question I have. Do you feel like China is improving very rapidly, or do you feel it's like it's more of a slow thing? Do you feel like it's speeding up, slowing down? Like, do you have any thoughts about that?
The economy is getting worse, but the social progress is getting better. So I
Mm-hmm.
do not know how to frame it.
I feel like that was a great answer. That really makes it clear. Thank you. Mm. I'm trying to think of more trans or LGBT specific questions. Are there any unique LGBT experiences to living as a transgender person in China? Or would you say it's really the same as kind of anywhere? I feel like I said I asked a similar question earlier, um, but I don't know. I'm curious if there are any unique aspects to being a trans person in China that you feel like might not be similar elsewhere.
Well, maybe one controversial but unique aspect is that most trans women, like the stereotypical trans women in China, they tend to be more feminine than cis women.
Mm.
Like they pursue very high standards of female beauty. They are trying to be as feminine as possible. I do not
Mm-hmm.
know if that is seen in the US or other part of the world, but I do not want to be as feminine as possible.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of trans women here do the same thing, and I think it's a protection thing. You know, they want to fit in very well. They don't want to be treated poorly, so they like go above and beyond. Um, but I wish our culture did not make it where that people feel so pressured to do that. I like the idea of
Oh, no, no,
tomboy
no.
trans women.
Oh no,
No?
actually, I do not want to hear about some like progressive Western culture. Oh, no, I do not want to hear about that.
Mm-hmm.
The Western culture, in my opinion, is not Western. It's just like it's not uniquely Western. We have a lot of progressive history in the past in China, Japan, and indigenous Americans, South American people, things like that, and that is gonna get erased and ignored by the mainstream neoliberal narrative and frame the transgender activism, the LGBT activism as a wholly liberal, capitalist, Western scene, establishment scene, and I do not agree with that narrative.
Can you elaborate? Like, please, please.
Okay, so the neoliberal establishment is very good at taking like uh citing progress from other group of people and framing it as an advancement of liberalism of capitalism. For example, the indigenous Americans, the South American people, the Japanese people, Indian people, Thai people, they all have a non-binary gender system, and that is
Mm-hmm.
gonna be ignored, be erased by the mainstream narrative. And the mainstream narrative just insists that no, non-binary identities are a Western invention. They are invented by the West, by the white people, by the neoliberal establishment. And for most of the progress in other walks of life, such as women's rights, LGBT rights, they are mostly brought by leftist group, not liberal group. For example, the Stonewall riots were a leftist movement, not a liberal movement. But the liberals,
Mm-hmm.
the mainstream Democrats, are very good at at framing their progress uh, as liberal, as like attributed to liberalism. Like they are gonna say some dumb things like only liberalism and capitalism is responsible for all the social progress. What's the bullshit? Like
It's
the
so dumb how they say that.
the Stonewall riot actually had Maoist elements in it, and they are gonna
Really?
yeah. There are some Maoist elements in the Stonewall riot, and as well as anarchists, it actually was a big mix everywhere across the leftist political spectrum, from Maoist, Marxist-Leninists, anarchists, libertarian, socialists, everything. But the mainstream media just framed it as a as a liberal thing.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for saying that. It's really interesting to me that you know so much about American events like that and you're able to like call it out. And I know. I I think that is a really good point, and I think that you're right. And even Native Americans that were here in America before the white people came, before the Europeans came here, they had non-binary identities and two spirits. And like, I think you're right that liberalism and the neoliberal establishment likes to position itself as everything good. In reality, they are stealing credit for a lot of things by other groups. So thank you for calling that out and pushing back.
Yeah, okay. So mm, another thing I'd like to add is that the liberal establishment is very good at framing themselves as allies, as speaking for trans people or gay people. They are not speaking with them; they are speaking for them. Such as the big companies, the mega corp companies. This, Democrats win the election, they frame themselves as a progressive, as the voice of trans people. But when the conservative wins the election, they are just suddenly switching sides. They are switching sides to be with bigotry, things like that. Mm, Such as the Labour Party back in the Corbyn era was poised as the champion of progress, but
Mm-hmm.
the Labour Party itself got rid of Corbyn and elected some neoliberal centrists, and suddenly the Labour Party become transphobic as hell and banned adolescent trans healthcare in the UK. Like that's like a huge backstab to the trans community.
Yeah, they the neoliberal community does love to steal from not just trans people, but I feel like they like to steal from every possible group that they can in order to take their victories, but then they also love to blame all the other groups. Like It's that coin. They love to steal all the credit, but also push all the blame.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, you said it perfectly. Sorry for my broken English.
No, no, no. I'm just agreeing with you. I agree with you very much. And I am glad that you see it as well. But yes.
So, any more questions about being LGBT in China or general China questions?
I don't think I have any more specific questions. I think you have really been a pleasure to talk to. I would be curious. Well, you probably don't play a lot of video games. You probably are studying all the time and doing your research.
Previously, I used to play World of Tanks for like
Mm-hmm.
about 11 years, but now I don't play it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I'm too busy.
Yeah. I'm curious. Okay, I do have more questions. I have okay. We have 10 minutes in this meeting. Oh my gosh, I have been talking to you for so long. I'm sorry to take so much of your time. Um
No need to be sorry lah. I only have experiments in the afternoon and evening.
okay, okay. So I guess one more question I have would be, what would you say some of the most popular entertainment in China is? Either for you or your friends or like people you know.
Most popular is some video games or fashion,
Like
just boring fashion like in the West. The same
yeah,
thing. Basketball, soccer for men, and fashion for women.
cool. Is it the same video games as elsewhere in the world, or is there like a Chinese ecosystem of video games?
There is a Chinese ecosystem of video games, such as 王者荣耀. It's the most popular mobile game in China, but they never get played in the West.
Mm, interesting. Okay, thank you. I don't think I have other specific questions. I am trying to think of them before I hang up though,
Okay,
because
so may I add a little bit for this
yeah,
interview? I do not want my content to be shared to mainstream media such as BBC, CNN, things like that. I do not want to appear on mainstream media. So for your YouTube channel, it's probably fine, but please do not show it to like mainstream media, Western mainstream media, things like that.
I will not. And if they do happen to pick it up, do you want me to reach out and get them to kill it?
Okay. Can.
I,
I do not
I'll
want
do
to
that.
like
I
because
will do that.
maybe yeah.
I'll make sure that they don't use this for anything. And
Yeah, okay.
realistically, I don't have enough followers for them to ever see it. But if they do, I'll make sure that it doesn't go anywhere and I will make sure it's taken down for both
Okay,
of
okay.
us.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you so much for talking with me. Are there any other comments you would like to add or just anything else you want to say before we hang up?
One comment I'd like to add is that I do not look like this in mirror because I'm using my laptop and the laptop camera is crap and making me look more masculine than I am.
The laptop cameras are always so bad. They make everything flat. There's no
Yeah, they make
depth.
everything
Yeah.
flat, like very awkward, very ugly. In reality, I do not look like this at all. I
I do not think I think you look very beautiful. I do not think you look ugly.
oh, shit. It makes me look so bad. It distorts things a lot.
Yeah.
Oh, and one thing I'd like to add is that I'm DIY my hormones because the public hospitals they need parents' consent and they have some very outdated ideas of femininity and trans women. So I just bought the hormones myself in Thailand. I just bought them in Thailand
In person or online?
in person. Because
Gotcha.
online they do not allow hormones. Actually, I could buy it online, but I wanted to travel to Thailand, so I just like by the way buy some hormones and like that.
Yeah. Are they just over the counter in Thailand?
Yeah, they are over the counter, correct? Like the salesperson would call me like, "Sir, here is your estrogen." I'm like, "What?"
That's always so awkward. My pharmacist will do the same thing. They'll be like, "Sir, your estrogen," and I'm like, "What the heck?" I
Naturally, I have a lot of funny stories from Thailand.
mm-hmm.
Like when I was walking alone, uh, in a red light district in Bangkok, a
Mm-hmm.
sex worker called me, "Sir, you have big booba."
Oh my gosh, that is hilarious.
Mm, Actually, Thailand may appear to be very progressive, but in reality, there are a lot of white people like chasers. They call me Chenny if I go out in women's clothes, and they just call me like male man if I go out like this.
Yeah. And would you say there's a lot of what are they called? Passport bros or like is that the demographic of white people that you're talking about
Yeah, there are
or
a lot of them, like because Thailand is generally a cheaper country to live in than the West. The white people, Western people often spend their free time in Thailand and hire a lot of
mm,
sex workers, including transgender sex workers, and fetishize them a lot, things like that.
yeah. So it's like this fake idea of it looks progressive to the tourists, but it's not actually progressive.
Hmm. But actually, lady boys in Thailand are a whole different thing compared with trans women because I
Oh
asked
really?
many lady boys, like they say, I do not identify as a woman. I identify as a lady boy. They
Mm.
do not identify as women. I'm not sure if it's an accent or it's really like this. Like many of them said, I do not want to take hormones because that's the body my parents gave me. I do not want to change it. I'm just
Really? They
choosing.
they don't even take hormones.
Some of them do not, some of them do. It's like a coin flip, 50-50 thing
Yeah,
like
yeah,
that.
yeah. That is really interesting. Thank you for
Like
yeah.
I talked with one lady boy, whatever they told me that they do not want to be a lady. They think being a lady
Mm.
boy is good. They identify the lady boy and do not want to take hormones. And they are calling me a transgender woman because
Mm-hmm.
I say I identify as a trans woman, but they do not identify as women. Some of the lady boys do, some of the lady boys don't. It's kind of like talk coin flip again.
Yeah. That's really interesting. Thank you. Do you think that do you think there's a similar group of people in China that would kind of be like that? Or would you say that there's not really an equivalent?
No, it's not an equivalent in China. Because in China, the gender system is pretty much binary, similar to the US, similar to the West.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, there's not a really traditional non-binary identity. The non-binary identity in China is imported from the West.
That makes sense. Okay. Thank you very much for chatting with me. This was really enjoyable. I had a great time. I'm curious if there's more questions in the future, would we be able to schedule another call or
Can If you have any other questions in the future, we can schedule another call. Yeah.
okay, perfect. Well, thank you so much for chatting with me, Scarlett.
Okay, and thank you so much for calling me Scarlet. I'm really getting tired of being called that name.
Yeah. Well,
Okay, thank you
you
very
are
much.
you're Scarlet to me, and you'll be Scarlet to everybody that watches this video. So I I will send you a link when this comes out as well. Because you are able to see it, right?
Okay, okay.
Okay, perfect. Awesome.
Okay,
Thank you
thank
so
you.
much.
Okay, thank you. Bye.